joining. Sonal, you're there as always. Thank you. Thank you, intern. I'm sure you're going to have some rest. Chijoke won't be bothering you again for some time. Till okay, no, you're not resting yet. We'll have next week Wednesday the grand finale on the mediation approach with women, and on Friday. So after next week Friday, you can say, okay, Chijoke will just not call me every time for anytime we are here. Open or make the platform accessible. You'll rest. At least you have a month clear rest from my wahala, like you say in our local parlance, till July, the last Friday in July. So thank you, Sonal. You're always there, ever. Come rain, come shine, you're always there. We've done it. I'm so proud of everyone. I'm proud of what we are doing. I'm proud of everything we are doing. You need to see. I wish you could get the feedbacks I get. The ones I share, the ones I don't know how to put across, but I just share them in some ways. You'll be amazed at this little thing we do within our space on how it has promoted our names beyond borders. Oh, when they say, oh, Tracy's, oh, Chijoke, oh, Sonal, oh, Intern. I'm sure some of them haven't seen, because Intern is not so active on Facebook. Or if she is, she's not on my, I've not, she's only on Instagram. Intern is very active. So a lot of people are very, people are so blown away. And I wonder, what we are doing, other people are doing. What we do, every other person does. So just about the grace of God. And I feel also the passion people put in, and of course the passion people put in, but above all for me, I believe it's just the grace of God. So today we're going to do oil and gas. We're doing oil and gas today. I'd like us to be out of here in the next top 45 minutes. So 4:15 Nigerian time, and your time in the next 45 minutes, I'd like us to be out of here. So once we are on, we're doing a very important we're facilitating on a very important facet of mediation, oil and gas. I remember sometime intern had told me, why don't you think of how we're going to, monetize this? But I've been waiting for her to get back. She hasn't gotten back on this very important topic, or this important facet of mediation we always talk about every other session. We're going to talk about oil and gas, very, very prime. Just like a lot of lawyers who want to go into real estate, this is another area that I feel mediators who want to make the money, have some good returns, should also pay attention to. So we're going to talk about oil and gas. We already know this is a very, very complex transactional area. The money involved in this area, you can only imagine. And one can only imagine that these people who are active players in this sector, they will not want to be at the courts. In fact, I think when mediation was being proffered as a leeway for a lot of conflicts, I'm sure the people had this particular facet of mediation in mind, because you can imagine top players in this field being in the courts often. I don't know. How would they meet their deals? How would they close on their deals that are have timelines? So this is actually for them, basically. So we're going to talk about the importance of mediation in oil and gas. I've said it. Number one, they have to maintain their confidentiality. They have to meet their timelines. It's not a business it's not an all-comers affair. It's a high cost intensive sector. So it needs to be, tidied up very neatly. It doesn't need to be out there. You need to do your businesses as and when due, to meet your timelines. So the types of disputes that are involved in the oil and gas, you have the contractual disputes, you have the environmental issues, you have the joint venture disagreements, and you have the regulatory compliance. I like to take it again. The types of disputes involved in the oil and gas, you have the contractual disputes, you have the environmental issues, you have the joint venture disagreements, and you have the regulatory compliance. Contractual disputes, basically you're given a contract to tidy up a transaction in the oil and gas sector. Maybe you're meant to supply one instrument or the other to aid them in the oil and gas business. And for one reason, these things come in millions of dollars. And for one reason or another, there's a breach of contract. Can you imagine if that person goes, intentionally says, like for us in Nigeria, where we have a lot of adjournments. A lot of matters being adjourned. Can you imagine? So someone says, okay, yes, I'm owing them, I've breached this contract, let me take them to court because I know I'm going to drag them, I'm going to be in court forever. No reasonable businessman who is involved in this high cost intensive sector will want to be in court forever. So he will just throw the part of mediation. So these are some of the issues. A breach of contract. Nobody wants to be involved in that in the oil and gas sector. Environmental issues. I'm almost like a broken record. I've given continually an example of a place in Nigeria. It's in the south of Nigeria. It's called River State. And there's a place called Ogoni. This is a place that has been messed up because of the environmental issues. But there's been no strong will to see how to tidy up on this particular place. No strong will. So you've had that place forever in a mess. It's now practically affecting other areas of life endeavors of the people who are part of the community. So these are issues that stem or arise in the oil and gas sector. Joint venture disagreements. You can imagine two big wigs in this sector being involved in a disagreement because of joint venture. I don't want to specifically mention names, but I hope you have an idea. Just like I want to use Mr. A and Mr. B, who are high players in the oil and gas, and they have an issue of joint venture disagreement. Maybe someone says, okay, this is what I'm going to offer, this is what you're going to bring, and the other person doesn't come with what he's meant to do. You can only imagine the negative effect. Again, we want to talk about key strategies. Because of the high cost-intensive nature of this sector, it's very expedient that everything that is done in this sector is thoroughly taken care of. You have to have a thorough preparation. If you're not going to say, okay, this is the way out, this is the leeway out of this conflict, you're going to make sure that everything that is done there, you've built confidence in these people. You're not going to make them have a second thought. So you're going to have a thorough preparation. You're going to make sure all issues are highlighted. They understand the technicalities involved, the technical aspects of the dispute are well understood. In this area, you're going to make sure that what we practice as mediators, active listening, you're not going to give room for any ambiguity. You're going to make sure that you understand what they're saying. Everything is clearly cut out so that in this sector, you don't have anybody saying, oh, I didn't understand it, or being forced eventually to recourse to litigation. And that will defeat the purpose of coming to have an oil and gas mediation dispute. Again, above all, the interest of all the parties, the big wigs, their interest is all they're interested in. They don't have no enemy in this sector. They just want their interest. So you're going to make sure that whatever you're doing, whatever dispute you're resolving, you have to pay attention to their interests, their business interests. It has to be covered. There has to be a win-win. There has to be nobody walking out of the room feeling unfulfilled. No room for having to recourse to litigation or having a second thought of litigation. I've talked about communication skills, very important in this very sector, and the negotiation skills. The challenges in this sector is primarily, it's a very technically complex sector. It's a very technically complex sector. You can imagine something being very expensive, being being cost intensive, and at the same time being very technical. If you're going to have issues like this in the oil and gas sector, where matters are very technical, very cost intensive, you're going to make sure, because these are challenges, you just have to make sure that issues are nipped at the bud. Anything that will give room for complexity to still abide, to still be there after mediation, you need to know how to proceed. So in other words, it's not an all-commerce field for every mediator. The mediator has to know some technical jargons, more like, in this sector. So to know how to navigate, how to wriggle his or her way out of any issue that arises. Most importantly, again, legal differences. If you have two countries who are involved in this mediation dispute in oil and gas, for instance, I'm doing my oil business in Nigeria, Sonal is doing hers in India, we need to know the common ground. We need to know the laws to apply. And thank God for the Singapore Convention. It gives room now for us as mediators to know how to go about any issue that arises, particularly, and this is also most especially seen in joint venture agreement. So we need to know how to merge, have a law that will be applicable to both of us, that both of us will feel very, very satisfied with. I like to remember one of our guest facilitators that came here. That was a parting word for me. He said something about make mediation in such a way that when the person is leaving the mediation session, he has no other thought but that mediation, to feel, oh, this is where it all starts and this is where it all ends. You have to make it in such a manner that it has to be very competitive. Let it be in a place that this is where it ends, this is where it starts, and it all ends. So this sector, like I said, is a very complex sector. The parties involved, companies, corporations, of course, companies, corporations, different institutions. This is a sector that, the mediator's creativity is called to place. You are an artist in this particular mediation dispute, because you need to know how to think outside the box. And you need to think, as you're thinking outside the box, you're thinking with contemporary laws. You're thinking with contemporary life situations. Because these are people that have their money or their monies to pursue the matter in court. So you need to, whatever you're telling them has to be something that has to hold them down, has to hold them within that space you want them to be, to toe the path of dispute resolution within that mediation session. So anything that you tell them, if it's not in tandem with them seeing a ray of light in resolving that dispute, they might be forced to go to the courts. And you don't want that as a mediator. Some people will wonder and say, okay, why don't you, let's just be bothered about getting a settlement agreement. But we know as mediators that if two opposing parties, two disputants have an issue, and you can imagine people that have so much money and, they can call each other's bluff. They can decide to say, okay, I'm not interested in what you're doing. But if you've, through your skill as a mediator, being an artist, you've managed to get them into the same room, they've sat down 1 session, 2 sessions, even if they don't eventually get to a settlement agreement, but you've nudged them towards sitting down, talking. That's a success for you. And because this sector is highly cost intensive, deep down them, no matter how much they disagree, they will not want to eventually go to the courts. They don't want their matters in the public space. They have, if they're operating within Nigeria, for instance, they have international contacts. They know that, okay, if they are in court tomorrow, they're in court next tomorrow, or for any careful investor that wants to invest with them, says, oh, let's do a thorough search on this people's profile, on this company's profile, and they see that, oh, they're in court today, they're in court tomorrow, they're in court next tomorrow, they will hesitate. They won't be as engaged to coming to them for any business. So these companies are aware of some of this setbacks. So they don't want to expose themselves to lose international business that will come to them because of concern. No matter how much of ego they show and say, okay, no, we don't want this, we want to go to court. Deep down, they don't want to go to any court. They know the only way to resolve this matter is by having a viable mediation session. So the mediator already has an ace. All the mediator needs to do is to be artistic enough, to think outside the box well enough to hold these people down in the mediation session, so that you will have a successful mediation session. I don't know if anybody has anything to chip in. Maybe as you ask your questions, it could further, make me to be more engaged and answer more questions. Thank you very much. While I wait for your questions, if there's none, I'll continue.
Hi, Jijioke. I thought that was brilliantly put out. It's really, really, really interesting. It's such an interesting field. And I'm so happy to hear that you personally as well have to go through this on a daily basis. I think if I want to chip in, it's because it is sort of linked to commercial mediation. I would say that it is under commercial mediation, but it is now a mediation field on its own because it's so needed. And with Singapore Convention being applied, being practiced, it's always sort of at the heart of where lucrativity of being a mediator is. But not all mediators would get an oil case unless you have really good referrals, and unless you've done a lot of Fortune 500 companies, unless you've done a lot of mediation in this kind of field. Because firstly, I think what you need to take into account is there will be a team of mediators. You don't just get enlisted or appointed out of the blue. You will be chosen from different pools of mediators. And even for one mediation matter that one person will be mediating, you already have sort of a pool of mediators coming up with strategies. That's one. Also very important to understand that the parties will be trained by other mediators. So it's important for you to be very skilled in sort of, like I said in my presentation, the iceberg theory, as well as the hierarchy, to understand the emotions of the parties, the position of the parties, the needs and interests, and what, being an active listener is important as to thinking as to, trying to deciphering what it is that, or what is it that they really, really want out of it. And they have the appropriate authority to settle. So it's not really about them, it's their position, and it's about the company's interest or the entity's interest. But it's important to understand when they go around the bush, when they're giving their opening presentations or listing their agendas, you need to really, really be an active listener as to listen to cues or listen to keywords that could lead to different strategies, that could lead to the opening of different strategies. So important to strategize before a matter, because this is involving sometimes nations' interests, sometimes billions of US dollars, per barrel or whatever, all of that you need to be familiar. But I think what's important, firstly, I would say to different mediators, from my experience, is always the ethical matter of it. So I think a lot of mediators have to be familiar with the ethical considerations or ethical matters, meaning who you can speak to, say once you're enlisted, who you can't speak to, what you can bring up, what you can bring up, the local law and regulations when it comes to the ethical considerations of every case, because maybe in different nations, different countries, different governments, they apply different sort of ethical codes. Important for you to understand, sometimes in certain countries or certain democracies, certain governments, when it comes to the oil industry, there's always corruption, and how best you can terminate that, and how best you can shun off any corruption or any conflict of interest. So that's so important, because most cases get terminated, or most matters don't get resolved the best way because of this particular issue, right? So that's one, ethical. Secondly, you need to be familiar with policies, local policies, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and also be familiar with the acronyms, because the acronyms will keep changing. Well, that's what I always say. Sometimes they add an S, they add an F, they add something there, and it's completely different. So acronyms and policies are two very, 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 very important things, because they will come up, and you need to be familiar with the industry itself. But not just that, with the companies, because the companies, when it comes to their regulations, the way they operate and things like that, will also be very, very different. As to when you talk about, oh, we can dig here, but we can't dig there. And, if there's there's a disagreement on where we could have done something wrong here or there, it's important for you to understand the geographical, how do I say, geography, right? The geographical aspect of it too, the location as to why this dispute actually happened, and the date. Because another thing that I find with these cases is the nitty-gritty bit of it is the date of when it occurred. It could have happened like 20 years ago, but someone wants to bring it to mediation, and maybe at the time the regulations with that particular government is completely different to what it is now. So all of that needs to be taken into account, and it needs to be very detailed. So I think when it comes to mediating something like this, you are getting paid a lot. You're getting paid a lot, but it's, of course, all the things that you need to be very, very prepped with, need to be very, very prepared to face whatever that's going to happen on your mediation table. And you being able to sort of manage the mediation, meaning to hone the parties, using your ground rules to bring back the parties to the process, to make sure that they will have sufficient sort of hope, like what Brenda said last night, to empower them enough for them to understand that there is a win-win solution. That's sort of a given, but it's really difficult if you're managing parties that are very high ranked and very powerful at your table. So the power imbalance will need to be managed in such a way, right? In such a way where they don't even realize that you are trying to equalize them in a way. And I've seen this in the most skilled of mediators. We're talking high level mediators. We're talking about I think we see that in our sessions, we see some mediators, some of our guests, and they do this for a living, and you see how different they are, the way they converse, the way they interact, even with us, even during their trainings. And that's exactly how they are as a mediator. And what else? There's one more that I wanted to add earlier. Yeah, numbers. You have to get the numbers right. The prices, the numbers. If there's an issue with, something to do with shares or stock exchange, you need to be familiar, again, with the formulas, with the acronyms. The formulas are also very important. You can't say, I'm a mediator, I don't understand. No, you have to actually be in the know. And that's why some mediators are already briefed beforehand about what they're going to expect, because like I said, the parties might already have sort of a run through with their trainers. And sometimes we're talking about, if there is a dispute between a contractual dispute or anything like that, yeah, it will be like that. But what about disputes when it comes to victims and an oil company, for instance? So many different matters that are coming up in which a lot of victims or families of victims from many, many years ago that are claiming losses from huge entities in the oil industry. And when that happens, you have to understand one party is already being really, really trained to say the right things. And then, you have the powerful company using their sort of usual standard line to reply. So you need to be able to equalize, anticipate that as well, to ensure that both parties are sufficiently informed as to what will happen in the mediation process. Because when they go through it, it's like to them, it's like, okay, you have to say this, after this is going to happen, that's going to happen. But at your mediation table, you need to establish, you need to be able to establish your sort of position there. Yes, it's a neutral third party. Yes, an impartial third party. This is a safe space, but at the same time, you need to be real, right? This is not a play or a rehearsal or whatever. If you rehearse it so many times, you need to be able to break that, and for them to really come up with what they really want and what really happened. If you're taking the emotional side of it, you need to be able for them to speak about all the different angles in a human way. And that's with the use of the right questions, with creating doubt, with reframing, with summarizing what they said in a way where they would understand in a neutral way, and how you really handle the parties, how you treat them equally. At the end of the day, they need to trust you. They need to trust the process. It could be $1 trillion at your table being talked about. It could be the president, president of the world at your table. But at the end of the day, you as a mediator will need to remember the basic principles of mediation, or being, the basic principles of being a mediator: impartiality, being neutral, treating them equally, keeping to confidentiality, keeping to time, and practicing all the different various methods that you've been practicing in order to keep the neutrality, being able to use ground rules to take back the parties, being able to list the agenda well, being able to facilitate the discussions well, and being able to facilitate the separate sessions well, because the separate sessions are what will determine sort of the flow, right? Not just the opening statement, but also the separate sessions, the flow and the outcome sometimes of the mediation. So I think if you really, really garner and you master the basic principles of mediation, and as a mediator, later on, you will practice all the different skills. But being a mediator in this industry, I would say, is the most lucrative, but highly dangerous. I mean, a lot of mediators during the mediation process, sometimes it doesn't take a day, sometimes it takes a week, will be heavily guarded. Now, they will be residing in an allocated place, but guarded, with all the forces, with all sometimes the army or the police force will guard them and their team, because it could get quite dangerous in certain situations. But it is an interesting field, and I think to all the participants, if this is relevant in your country, in your life, or you want to go out and find opportunities to sort of get involved in this kind of cases, please do, because the younger and the fresher and the more optimistic and intelligent you are, the more they will sort of enlist you on their team. And then later on, you could also be the mediator. And yeah, and I think Chijioke covered all the other aspects, but I really do think that that's what I have to say. Maybe later if I come up, if I could think of more things that I could add on to that, I will sort of ask Chijioke for an opportunity to say something. But thank you. Maybe Tina or Sonal would like to say something.
Okay, no, let me not lose my thoughts. Just hold on a bit. Let me not. That's very good. I like your perspective. I like I like what the perspectives you brought on board. Particularly, we need to put into consideration the ethical consideration, because one of the main reasons why this particular facet of mediation is thriving is because of confidentiality. The ethical consideration of confidentiality. Most of them, they're high up there. They don't want their businesses to be in the public space. So they want issues, I beg your pardon, they want issues that affect them to be solved almost secretly within. Because like I gave an instance, I said if someone was in Nigeria where I am, and he's always on the pages of the newspapers or always in the cost list of costs of a lot of costs, as an investor, you will lose confidence. You will not want to have anything to do with my company if I'm in Nigeria and an oil company, and you see me always in court often, or when you're checking out my profile, it's okay, he has had a lot of all these cases. You want to be associated. So most of them thrive. Most of them take the advantage mediation offers by virtue of confidentiality. That's number one. Number two.
Can I just add
like the point.
Sorry, Chijioke, if I could just add to that, because that was so brilliantly done. I forgot to really expand on confidentiality. Another ethical consideration to sort of take on or to think about is the fact that when the whole process is confidential and you are well known and you're both well-known entities, you've got parties that are very well-known, but you as a mediator yourself is a well-known mediator. It could give room to sort of people wanting to get information about cases and paying the right people to sort of get a little bit of information about the mediation. So it's how do you keep your process completely, entirely confidential? So always holding on to it being ethical. So as a mediator, you need to ensure that it's only the three of you at the mediation table and no one else. And being strict like that with yourself and with the process. And that takes a really highly respectable or highly respected mediator with high ethical standards to be able to ensure that entirely. Because some mediators will go like, okay, fine, I'll give you a little bit. There are unethical mediators. When you talk about corrupt professionals, there are so many corruptions everywhere, right? And that's what you don't want in the profession. You don't want the reputation of highly ethical mediators being tarnished because of that, because a lot of people want to know. It is a highly lucrative business, and it's also something that is thriving or have always been thriving, but also involving very, very, very well-known parties or entities. Thank you. But that was brilliantly put. Thank you for reminding me, Chijioke. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that too. Again, like you said, this was initially part of commercial mediation, but as things evolve, mediation becomes very contemporary. This has to find its own way, carve its own niche. It was part of commercial mediation initially, but as mediation evolved contemporarily, it has now carved its own niche, for people to thrive in. Like you said again, and very importantly, the power imbalance. I've never seen a place that there is so much power imbalance as it is in oil and gas sector, because this is a place where the big boys, the ones that have so much money, in millions of dollars, in billions of dollars, this is where they play. This is where they exercise their powers. So as a mediator, you need to be very sure of what you're doing. Your skill set has to be top notch. You also need to know how to manage egos. You need to know you're not going to be a mediator that's easily, you usually let go. You're not going to be a mediator that's easily put off, because these people feel they have all the money. Yes, they know the advantages of coming for a mediation session, because like I said, they don't want to be in the public space. They know that, but they don't also want you to abuse. They don't also want you to take advantage of them, like to say, okay, because you don't want to go to the court, so you're here. You want to squeeze out. Like, no, they'll also want to put up some appearance. So as a mediator, you need to be very active. This is where as a mediator, you need to know how to think outside the box, how to hold people, hold their attention, hold everything they have. regardless of how wealthy they are. Make them very comfortable. Get out all the things you need from them. Not minding on how, because they feel they have it. They know they say, okay, I have so much money I can go, but they don't want, they can't go there because of their businesses. So you need to give them a platform that they will express themselves. Meanwhile, they are being checked. So as a mediator, you need to have that skill. Again, you mentioned something about regulatory compliance. Yes, we know that what might be law today might not be law tomorrow. So most people involved in this business, in this dispute area, in this particular facet of it, they want issues to be dispensed of immediately because policies change. If you have a policy today in 2024, you're not sure when an election or a military coup takes place, what the next policy will be. So you need to make the best use of the policies presently. And if you want to depend on the system, you want to depend on the judiciary, as it is, as well as I know, at least for those of us in developing climes, these matters could take forever. So anyone involved in this very highly cost-intensive sector wants to pursue, by all means, mediation to make sure that the matter is resolved speedily and at least at a very cost-effective rate for him. Most importantly, very speedily, because he does not want to be trapped in the policy somersaults that goes on in most countries that are developing. I like that point you made mention of. Again, you talked about I talked about thorough preparation. Thorough preparation is basically very key here because the technical aspect of this is very, very key. As a mediator, you need to know for whatever is what, even if you're not going to be involved in it, practically hands-on. By virtue of reading, like for instance, I do a bit of research occasionally on all these things. I could Google, I could chat, I could do then for when I now meet them by experience, or some of my friends who are active in that sector, or when I have an opportunity to mediate, you need to be constant because this brief is not just for everyone. You could be so well known, you could be as renowned as Ken Cloak might be. I'm sorry to say, but he might not have a brief from some of these people if they're not sure. Because if they're not sure of what he's going to bring to the table for them, yes, they might know he's very good. But for us, maybe those of us who are developing clients, you need to have that contact, that networking ability. Yes, they know you're good, but you need to know it's not going to be, because he's so good, it's an automatic brief for him. No. They want you to break into that circle. So now you have to now develop a way of being a very social person, how you're going to network and break into that circle. Because if you can't break into that circle, you might not be able to have that mediation brief, no matter how good you are. The only thing I will not speak well for you is like if you're high up there, like our mentor, Ken Cloak, is okay, saying, okay, he's number one. He doesn't need to know us. Let's just give him this brief because we know this is the way it will end. It will end well for everyone. But if you're not yet at that level, you need to now know how to network, how to be, very sociable, how to get it across so that because for these sectors, or for this sector, I beg your pardon, they have already a list of people they feel can mediate for them. It's like a brief. They say, okay, this person is who can break into this circle. No matter how well skilled you are, if you don't have that network to break into that circle, or like I always believe, if you're not guided by the divine to help you break into that circle, speak words into their minds for you to, appeal to them and invite you, you're stuck. No matter how well read or how well vast or how deft you are in the practice of mediation. Like I said, I don't want this class to be more than the next 10 minutes. So I don't know, Sonal, if you have anything to add, or Tina, so that we can all begin to go at. But please, I like to digress a bit. I like our questions to be ready because next week is going to be very important for us. Thank you very much. Tina, we can hear from you. Anything you want to chip in?
Certainly, and thank you and Ton for this in-depth discussion on mediation in the gas and oil sector. So I'm really intrigued, and I'm trying to listen to everything with great intent because this is new to me. So thank you for sharing your expertise. So I have two questions, and one is, what is the most used model of practice? Because I think that facilitative and evaluative models would seem most appropriate, but of course there's transformative. So I'm just curious in terms of what is most used, or what you see most used in terms of practice. And you also are speaking very much, I'm hearing a competency in the sector is emphasizes highly important. So I'm wondering about the mediator's background, if which is why I'm curious about evaluative mediation, and that need for expertise being very critical. My second question, in terms of process, I'm trying to get a greater feel for what it's like to have a seat at the table. So I'm wondering, are these sessions mostly or more popular to be held separate meetings, or because they're highly intense in negotiation, and I'm just wondering what it might look like, shuttle diplomacy, or do you hold joint sessions? I'm just trying to find a better picture of what these high stake negotiations may look like. Thank you.
A very wonderful question as always. For me personally, for you to be what the model to use in the oil and gas is a combination. Is a combination of all the models, because number one, you're going to be transformative because you're looking at the relationship. You're going to be transformative, evaluative, because there are a lot of technicalities involved. So you need to juggle them. You need to sample them. One facilitative, you want these issues to be so for me is a mixed story. You need to have this combination to achieve success as a mediator in the oil and gas. Then I think if you could repeat could you come again with your second question? So I could know how to address it. What did you say about the second question? I lost you on the second question. Please come again. I lost you on the second question. If I could hear your second, the first one is a combination.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Because the first one was to try to get an idea of the level of competency.
All right. Okay, good. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, that. Thank you. The second question was in terms of process. I'm trying to get an idea because I'm picturing high stake negotiations, and quite high dollar amounts based on what you've shared. Do you are these sessions held in joint session more frequently, separate meetings with shuttle diplomacy? What does that look like in this? Because I picture intense negotiations.
Yes, very intense. Okay, very intense from the ones I've done occasionally. I'll share my experience. Very intense. I think basically number one, is the competence is very necessary because, like I said, it's a very technical area. It's a very technical area. But like for us as lawyers and for people that are also vast in mediation, by virtue of experience, what you do every other day, you begin to have a kind of mastery over. So you need to be, is an area that demands you to be up to speed. You need to be up to speed. There's some technicalities involved. You just cannot feign ignorance. You cannot feign not knowing what it's all about. You need to have a grasp, even if not so much. Like Lord Denning, one of the, I think, Lord Denning, he was saying something about, you don't need to know all the laws. All you need to know is where to find the necessary laws to apply. So in this matter of mediation, it demands competency. You need to for you to be very, you need to know what to apply at that very particular moment to make sense to the parties. Like you earlier on said, and I share your position, is a very highly intensive negotiation disputes, mediation dispute. Because at that level, you're going to have a lot of These are well-skilled people. These are people who have invested so much money in that sector. It's by experience. They've been there forever, almost like forever. So whatever you're saying to them has to make sense to them. So if you're going to say, okay, let go of this, you need to give them the reasons, adequate reasons for them letting go of anything you feel should be let go of in the interest of dispute settlement being reached as regards any dispute. So yes, it involves thorough negotiation skills. It's a very, very highly intensive. You need to put your all, you need to be competent, but you don't need to know everything. All you need to know is just what to say at that particular moment, what to apply, what to make them resonate with for the session to successfully come to an end. I hope that answered your question in some ways.
Yes, it did. And thank you and Anton for sharing your mastery of this process. Learned a lot today. Thank you.
All right. Sonal, can we hear from you? We just have about 3 more minutes to round up. Sonal, can we hear from you? Or 5 more minutes?
Actually, you have handled it very nicely, and then also gave her inputs. India, we are not doing natural oil and natural gas through mediation. It is mostly litigation, because these are very important industries, and the laws need to be adhered to, and mediation is not happening in this sector, and mostly it's like the government and bigger players at stake. So mediation is actually not happening. But yes, when I hear your insights, I really see that, first of all, as rightly pointed out by you, a mediator would have to know, working in this field, would have to understand the laws also, and to be able to apply them, or to be able to see that nobody is flaunting the law, doing something wrong, legally bypassing something in mediation process, because that are more chances of doing that here if the mediator is not aware of the legal status of the laws of the land. So I think that also that question was very nicely handled by you. So I think we have covered mostly as far as oil and natural gas is concerned, because it's a big industry with a lot of stakes at hold, and environmental issues also at hold. So it has to be handled very responsibly. So I think that's all I would be adding.
I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much, Sonal. I'd like to appreciate everyone for your contribution. We've covered everything we're meant to have covered for this session. The only thing we missed out on was, we missed out on two mediation areas. We didn't talk about the health disputes, which we normally talk about, and again, sports mediation. So what we'll do for the participants is that I had thought I would have gotten Kimberly Best, who we normally call as a guest facilitator, but she's been down. She's not been very strong of recent, and by God's grace, she's getting better. I thought about another contact of mine I just recently met for her to do on sports mediation, but I'm sure the next session in July she'll be available. So whatever happens, what we'll do when we get a kind of a little meeting with them, anytime could set up a Zoom link, maybe during our break. We could have a little meeting, then we could share the videos with the participants that came, and of course schedule an appointment with the other ones when we start our new session in July. Be that as it is, we know we have a very important session with the women, the Spanish-speaking colleagues. Our Spanish-speaking colleagues are so excited about it. Intern and Sonal and Tina, I believe you'll be there on Wednesday, so that you can also give them that friendly platform to make them feel very free and talk, even though we might not understand what they're saying. But I hope Sabrina and Araceli, they have a bit of grasp of English language. They'll find a way for us to understand what they're saying per minute, per second, I beg your pardon. So we'll be there on Wednesday. Intern, please don't forget, so that you set up the Zoom link early and they access it early. What again? After that, on Wednesday, on Friday, please, we'll have the role play. I've told all the participants they have to show us their faces, because we know as mediators, body language means a lot to us. As I say, whatever they're saying, we need to understand that, yes, these people really know what they're saying. So on Friday, the 28th, we'll see their videos. I invite all of us, I implore us really to come on so that we can listen to them as they do their role play. And when they now send their assessments to me, as always, I'll send across to all of you. You have a view of what they're saying. Once I have your take about them meeting up the criteria, we'll certify them. So see you all again by God's grace on Wednesday. If I have any other message, I'll send it individually to us and also on the platform. Thank you everyone for being available today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye. See you all on Wednesday. Please don't forget. Wednesday. Bye.